just leave Barry, we're bringing him on.
Yeah. You bring him on now, yeah?
No, but just leave him. Well, do you want me just to bring him on, you know?
I'll wait a while till we introduce him there, till we go through the rumours and we bring him on.
Right.
Hello and welcome to episode 17 of Celtic Rumours TV, the Bawz and Bovril podcast with your host Mark and myself Paul. On today's show we'll be joined by Barry. We will take a look at the latest transfer and gossip around Celtic. Today's show will be mostly based on the live chat where we will answer your questions and any topics you would like us to discuss on the show. So first we'll hang off to Mark there to do our weekly shout outs. Mark, off to you, bud.
Well, thanks, Paul. Thanks again for helping me in that, pal. Just the usual shout-outs to Tim Alloy, ROH and Young Ben. Some good news that Malik is getting home to see his family again soon, so that's a good thing for him. And a very happy birthday to our very own Stato, Buzzbomb's wife today. He's missing out in the stream tonight because he's out living the high life, I reckon. So who have we got there is a Glasgow Geekman, evening with AGG, how's it going, bud? David Gallagher. Bobby in as well.
I think Buzz has got the old ball and chain him tonight, so that's why he's missing the show, I think.
Can you imagine the conversations? Can you really imagine the conversations he has with his missus?
Sneaking onto his phone to watch the podcast.
She's maybe 40 today. It's like that's so many birthdays I've spent with you, and this is so many birthday cards I've got you to the 19 years we've been together.
Wow. So
It just on with the rumours then, Paul.
Yep. So again, it's being reported that Eddie Howe has agreed to join Celtic, and he is in the process of appointing his backroom team. Celtic scouts were again keeping tabs on St Johnstone player Ali McCann. Interim manager John Kenny has also stated that Celtic have been keeping tracks on the player for a while now. John Kenny and Gavin Strachan are sweating over their futures at Celtic, as it's being reported they have been told that the next manager will decide if they'll be involved in his backroom team. And also, free agent Nicky Powell is leaving Stoke City at the end of the season. Are Celtic going to be rumoured in this player, as we were linked in previous windows? So that's basically the rumours, as there's not much coming out of Celtic at the moment, but as days go by, we hope that there'll be appointment on Eddie Howe, hopefully, and that we can start to rebuild.
It's really starting to look as if it's going to be Howe, Paul.
I think so. I don't think they're kind of rumours anymore, Mark. I think it's practically a done deal, isn't it?
Well, it's all these supposed in-the-know things on Twitter and that saying it, but even some of the English press seem to have picked up on it. I read an article, I think it was the Daily Mail or something like that, and I mean, you'll have journalists that are friendly with Eddie Howe kind of thing. They'll know what's going on down there.
Is he the best candidate, Mark? Do you think that's out there at the moment?
Oh, see, I don't know, Paul, man. I've said it before. I'm not 100% convinced. It's a big job for him. It's a big step up from Bournemouth to Celtic. It's a big, not just in football, the actual lifestyle, living in Glasgow. Him and his family will be treated with one half of the city and treated different with the other half. It's a big. But in the football side, people that know a lot more than me about football seem to think that he's got what it takes.
Maybe it's the job he wants, Mark. It's a chance for him. Basically, he's going to be starting from scratch at Celtic because the players that are leaving.
It was like a pro. That's what one of the buzzwords into it. It was a project that he was looking for.
Yeah.
Well, Celtics I suppose you could put that down as a project. It's rebuilding he's been part of a team that's rebuilding the full club, one of the biggest clubs in the world. Get down. I mean, it was never going to happen. They were talking about him going to Spurs as manager. That was never realistic. But it's the same whole story in that Premier League. For me, any manager in that Premier League's like 6 games away from the sack.
Yeah.
You know, I'm talking at that kind of level. There's no longevity when they appoint managers down there. It's just, we'll appoint him. If it doesn't work out after, I'm saying 6 games, but say after a year at the most. I mean, even Lampard at Chelsea, you know what I mean, sacked.
Exactly.
If you're a manager, you're well paid now, it's big fancy league and that, but it's a bit of what would you call it, a bit of, I'm not an abattoir, but you know what I mean, a bit cutthroat. It's just that you're never there. Is there any long-term plan in England that Eddie Howe could say in 2 or 3 years' time I'll still be managing that team?
Exactly. There's no. The minute the results don't go your way down there, you're straight away you're under pressure in the Premier League, aren't you? It's more their safety than your job is their main concern, isn't it? With the chairman's down there, isn't it? It's the big money that they're worried about, Mark, isn't it? You know?
Maybe not, Spurs, they're looking to get into Champions League and things like that, but at the lower end of the table, I mean, as if for any hint of relegation, they're changing their manager because they need to do something because they just can't afford to drop out of that league.
Exactly. So we're going to get Barry on the line there now, lads, and first we'll have a brief chat about last night's match. What's your thoughts on last night's match, lads? Were you happy with the performance, or was it a little bit too late from the Celtic team? Were you impressed with Montgomery's performance and Kiko Dembele's goal for Celtic? Is that Barry there?
I'm just calling him up now, Paul. I mean, it was a good performance last night, but it was a meaningless game, wasn't it? It was just...
I think I said that too, Mark, about the Livingston game, that the pressure's off them. You know, they can just play kind of with a bit of freedom now, isn't it? You know, it was more about Scott Long last night than anything really, Mark, wasn't it? You know.
Scott Brown show. You there, Barry?
Yeah, here, guys.
Aye. But thanks for joining us again, Barry. Welcome aboard, bud.
No worries at all.
Welcome again, Barry. Your thoughts on last night's game? I know it's at the end of the season and it's a meaningless game, but were you happy with the performance last night, or?
Yeah, I mean, I was. Yeah, it was a great way to sort of finish the season, finish the last home game for Scott Brown. It's great to be able to come on and have a chat about a positive result and a positive performance
Mhm.
last night. I thought there was a lot of plus points to take. I thought young Adam Montgomery, I thought he was outstanding last night. I think he can be well pleased with his contribution, his home debut. I was really impressed with that young guy. I would actually give him man of the match for his contribution. And we Dembele as well, getting on the score sheet. The finished 4-0. It could have been a hat load of goals. So yeah, I mean, we'll take the game in isolation. We'll not think why was that not happening. Throughout the season, we'll just take the game in isolation. And yeah, it was a great performance and a good result.
It was good to see him play with a bit of freedom, wasn't it? Passing the ball around and like that was it was like Celtic of old, wasn't it? The freedom they had with the ball and they got their flow going, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably a performance that we've not seen much of the season. To be honest, there was a lot of attacking football. I think a lot of the guys will agree. A lot of the football we've played this season has been a bit side to side and back and not very penetrating. But last night we've seen guys taking up great positions. Elyounoussis, Edward dropping in, Forrest, Christie, Turnbull. They all seemed to be on the forefront last night, and it was a right tackling performance. And like I said, it could have been a number of goals. There were some right good chances that we missed. Elyounoussi had a couple, Christie had a couple, Edward had 2 or 3 really, really good chances. So yeah, again, it was a good way to send Scott Brown.
And a plus
on his
last night, Mark. A plus last night too, Mark, was Bark has made a save that unsuspectedly he made a save last night, and I think that was one of the highlights from the game. Hopefully that he got a good one.
Is that the first save he's made all season?
I think so.
Honestly, I think it actually is. But it's Barry. I thought young Montgomery was really impressed with him. I thought he had a great game last night. Baggy's an incoming manager, another conundrum, didn't it? Because we've agreed Taylor's no good enough to be a number one if we're going into Champions League and things like that. And well,
you'd like to see Montgomery in around the first team next season as well, Mark. That he's been there, he played well. Like, you don't want to see him kind of dropping out, like.
But that's what I'm saying. It would be it would be Taylor's place he'd be taking in the squad for me.
Yeah.
So we need a new number first choice left back, and for me Taylor was good enough as an understudy. But what I saw from Montgomery last night, he's good enough to be on. It's only one game. I'm not going to say he's the next KT or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? But maybe even a wee year out on loan could do the boys some good.
Barry, would you agree that maybe a year out on loan for him in the League One or to a Premier League team might do him the world good?
Oh, I mean, I definitely agree. But we'll not get too excited. We'll not get too carried away. Like I say, I thought he was outstanding. I was really, really impressed with the boy last night. He just seemed full of confidence. He seemed like there was nothing fazed him. I think when young players make their debut, sometimes it's easy just to keep it safe. Just always keep possession, play a safer pass. I thought he showed no fear at all last night. I think he was making passes, like forward passes. I think he was driving forward with the ball. But yeah, 100%. I mean, that's his first game. And with all due respect to St Johnstone, they didn't really test him out defensively. It'll be interesting to see, when he comes up, but maybe on the back foot against somebody. But yeah, I mean, certainly wouldn't get too carried away. This is just his first game, a lot of developing to do, but what a start for the young man.
And Mark, what about Welch coming up against an aggressive Kane last night? Do you think he handled himself well? Considering Welch's height is kind of a disadvantage to him within the centre back.
I thought Welch had a good game as well. I thought he'd put in a good shift in.
Because Kane is a tough character to play against, and he was kind of shove Welch or trying to wind him up. But fair dues to Welch, he was having none of it. He got on with his game and he did what we expect him to do. So I think
that's like showing a bit of maturity and. Well, he's not got experience, but you're expecting that for experienced players. You're expecting younger players to get a wee bit wound up. Do you know what I mean? They're not used to kind of getting the pee ripped out them on the park and things like that. But no, I thought he'd done well to keep his head and just stick at his game. I mean,
and it was good to see.
St Johnstone weren't any great shakes last night. I mean, it was right. Celtic beat them 4-0, but it was St Johnstone have got an eye in the cup final, haven't they? You know what I mean?
Exactly, but
I'm not getting
back to plus side, Mark.
Sorry, what?
To see Dembele score, and like his celebration showed that he actually still loves the club, and hopefully that Eddie Howe, if he is the new manager, can help him progress into the first team and sign a new contract, that we don't lose him for nothing next summer, because if he doesn't sign a new contract, Mark, we'll have to sell him this summer or maybe in January,
I think it'll be this summer if he's leaving.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Neil Lennon told him he'd be getting game time this season. But it's hard to put a young player into a team that's not doing well. And then, see if Neil Lennon had put Dembele into the team and it hadn't worked out right, it would be as if, what's he pinning all his hopes on this young boy for, and then he's damaged the boy's career and all that kind of talk would start. It's easier to put a young player into a winning team. And I think maybe that's what stopped him getting the game time that Lennon promised him this year, to be honest, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully a new man.
Maybe Len was trying to protect him or kind of a thing like that, wasn't it?
Protect himself as well and
Mm-hmm.
protect the team. Do you know what I mean? Because as I said, if it's a winning team, it's easier to put a young boy on for the last 20 minutes if you're 3 goals up kind of thing. But slogging it out at nothing each, you get Ibrox in places like that, Tynecastle, you're not going to put on a young boy to save the day.
Mm-hmm. So now we're going to move on. We're going to move to the live chat again, where we'll answer any questions or topics you guys want us to discuss. But before we do, I have a few questions from Jonas, who joined us on previous podcasts before and who will be joining us again, hopefully at the weekend. So Jonas is asking, should VAR be introduced to Scottish football? Mark?
If it's going to be done right, definitely. But no, if it's going to be done the way the English do it.
We kind of nearly see like that the Scottish FA will kind of be getting help from the Premier League if they introduce VAR, and the kind of same mistakes will be happening again, Barry, won't they? That up in Scotland and they are down in England, won't they?
Yeah. I mean, I said on a previous, I'm not a fan of VAR. I mean, Mark's pointed out before, the way it's done down in England is not the way VAR was supposed to be introduced. It's not the way it's been used previously and in other countries. I just, for me, it kind of rips the soul out of the game. So you see all these marginal offside decisions. For me, I don't want to see that in Scotland. I think I've said before, for certain decisions, for maybe like penalties, goal line technology, yes, I'm for it. But see, ruling goals out because a player's toe or an elbow or an ear is 2 or 3 centimetres in front of the defender, I don't like that at all.
It's taking the whole kind of celebration away from a goal as well. Like when they scored, they're waiting to see if VAR are going to make a decision on it like that. It's like, and then if VAR give the goal, the celebration is gone. Then in this, it's taken away the buzz of scoring the goal as well.
I mean, there's been no fans in this season and that, but imagine you're in Celtic Park, a derby game, and the ball is in the net, and you have to stand there for 2 or 3 minutes to VAR decides if it's a goal. It takes the whole atmosphere and enjoyment out of the game, I would think. The way the English do it, as Barry says, every daft wee decision, and it's down to millimetres of offside. That's garbage. It's a lot of garbage what they're doing with that. And see,
it is, because
see if you look about the internet and that, I don't know if any of you read it, there's a blog in on Twitter and that, it's called Football is Fixed. And this guy's comes out with this evidence that all that VAR is doing is helping all these dodgy gambling syndicates and that. It's a bit way out, but some of the stuff the boy says makes you think. But his name's on all these files, and there's something, I don't know why the English are doing it like that.
Yeah, because they seem to be doing it different to when you're watching international matches or European matches. Like, they don't really go by the way the English football is doing it right down to the millimetre. They rule like the forearm of your hand offside. Like, if you're in a run position, they'll rule that offside. Like, so it kind of makes no sense to where they're doing. But as he said, like, if it's being used right and effectively,
as well. I mean, can Scottish football afford VAR?
I wouldn't think so. No, I wouldn't think so. No, with the pandemic after happening and things like that, I couldn't see it. Like, So next question, Jonas has asked us, what position do you think Celtic need to improve next season, Mark?
But for who's here, including who we expect to leave in that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as I says, it depends who leaves, but if everybody we expect to leave leaves, it's a hard in that because we're going to need defenders, but we're going to need a striker, aren't we?
Because like 20 goals
The
from Edward, like, you know, so Mark, it's a big ask whoever we're going to sign is to fill Edward's boots again. I know he didn't play well this season, but he still ended up
20.
top scorer in the league. Do you know, so it's big boots they have to fill, Barry, really, if we're going to sign a striker, don't they?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think to answer the question, we're going for me. We need players in every single position, and that's not an exaggeration. You know, it was great. Great to see Barkas make that save. I think you're right, Mark. I don't even think we're joking. I think that might be his very first save that he's made.
He's serious, I think.
Yeah, I
Barry,
thought
I
you
think
were.
it was, yeah. I think that's
thought
the
you
only
were
time I
being
can remember
serious there,
him hand the ball in his hands.
yeah. But at the same time, I think I'd still like to see a goalkeeper brought in, and if Barkas is to maybe just bed his way in, or play second fiddle, I would have maybe Hazard out on loan and Bain's third choice. But I think we need defenders, we need midfielders, and we need strikers. Because, like I say, if Edward goes, we still don't know what's happening with Griffiths. Klamala is away, and obviously we've got issues with Ajeti. So, like I say, if it is Eddie, what a project it is. You talk about projects, what an opportunity it is for somebody, whoever gets the job, to come in and just right away, they've got, like I say, a blank canvas whereby they can come in and they can bring in the players. They're not having to come into a team and teach the players that are already there a system that he wants to introduce. He can actually go out and bring in players that he wants himself, or he knows, or he believes that can play his system. But I mean, Edward, absolutely big shoes to fill. And that goal last night, that was world class. Edward's goal last night, that was genuinely world class. Great ball from Brown, unbelievable touch, and a beautiful little dink. That's the Edward that we know. It's just unfortunate we've not seen it too often this season. But like you say, Paul, he's finished up top. Well, I think he's 4 ahead in Nisbet going into the last game of the season, so it's likely that he'll finish top scorer, even though we classed that he's had a poor season.
Just going on what you said, like that, it's more like fair, like the manager hopefully will bring in a players that will fit his system. I think that's one of the biggest things that will help us next season is that we actually have a proper system, playing system within the team, and we have a structure in the team. Something that we lacked this season when we saw players, they looked clueless on the pitch. They seemed to didn't know what they were doing. Like, and I think that's going to be a major step next season, Mark, when we have a new manager in place, that we have a proper structure within the club.
Well, even down on the park, Paul, it's got the players have got. I've keep going on about it. What Rangers are like, these teams that beat us in the Champions League. They're no good teams. They're just well drilled. They know the job. They know exactly what. Excuse me. They know exactly what they're doing on the park, and that's one of the things that I think Eddie Howe will bring with him, because he's used to doing that with his Bournemouth team. He's used to being the underdog and making sure that his players are well drilled and defending set pieces. Do you know what I mean? The basics of the game kind of thing. So I think that's the one thing that Howe could bring to us.
And next, he's saying, what are our thoughts on Celtic's core teams now that they got voted to play in the Lowland League? Now, before I talk about it, I read up on a few rules. So it's only under 21 players that can play in the Lowland League. You're allowed 1 or 2 under 21 players, but if the under 21 players have played in the first team more than 5 times, they can't play in the Lowland League until the next transfer deadline, and that goes for the under 21s. That if they're brought up to the first team and they play 5 times the first team, they'll have to wait for the next transfer window to register to play in the Lowland Leagues again. Is this a good move? I know we talked about it the other day, Mark. Look, considering that it's going to be mostly for youth academy, they might get some competitive games. Is there some benefits here, or are we kind of have our doubts about it still?
I still have serious doubts about it, Paul. I don't know the thinking behind it. I really don't. I mean, and it's only for a year as well, isn't it? So I don't see what purpose it's going to serve at all, really.
Especially when there's none of your kind of reserve team are going to be left playing there because it's going to be strictly for under 21. So it's going to be mostly your youth team, Barry, that's going to be playing there. You know, your youngsters. You know.
Yeah. So after like discussing it on the last podcast, I went and had a wee look into the Lowland League and the teams that are involved in it, and so it is like Celtic, Hearts, Bonnyrigg Rose, they're junior teams, but there's also a couple of ex-league teams like Berwick Rangers are in it, East Stirling are in it, and there's other ones like Stirling University, the Civil Servant Strollers, and on the back of it, I listened to another podcast because I was interested to find out why they were doing this. Like, because when we spoke on the last podcast, I couldn't see the benefit. I didn't understand why they would want to play at that level. And what I don't know if this is true or not. What they said on that podcast was there is no youth football just now. There's no youth leagues. Therefore, your younger players are not getting games. So if that's why they're doing it, I can potentially half understand, but at the same time, the sort of level that they'll be playing against, with no disrespect to the Lonely, it's not going to be a great level of football. For me, where this will possibly enhance their game is the physical side and the competitive side, as opposed to the actual quality of the football. But if that's true, if what the guys on that other podcast said was there is no youth football, therefore, the Celtic youths are not getting an opportunity to play against your Rangers, your Aberdeens, your Hibs at youth level, then they're maybe wasting away not getting any kind of games. So this might be the reason.
Sorry, Mark, go on.
But I was going to say, but see, rather than this campaign to get the teams into the Lowland League, should have not been campaigning against the SPFL and SFA to get these reserve leagues and youth leagues brought back in?
Mark, I don't know why they're not. I don't know why. There is no youth football. Is it a COVID? Is it due to the pandemic? Have they stopped that?
Well, there has been no. There was no. All the youth players all get put in furlough. That was
right, okay.
Celtic because of the pandemic and that. But I mean, for the last few years, there's not been any reserve league in Scotland.
No, there hasn't.
But I'm saying, why
Celtic?
I mean, because let's face it, this is another quote unquote old firm move when it's both Celtic and Rangers that have been making this move together. But why are they not saying, well, our players aren't getting the games they're needing? It's stopping the progression of our players. It's affecting our plans because maybe why can you blame these young boys leaving for Bayern Munich when they're not playing a game? They're not getting a game. There's no league for them to play in.
Could that be why so many young players are actually leaving, not just Celtic Scotland,
that just came into my head there about that. There've been no leagues. They're not even playing for a reserve league trophy or nothing. It's just pointless, meaningless friendlies that Celtic set up for them. So young boys for moving on for what?
That's what I'm saying. Could that be one of the reasons why so many young players are leaving Scotland at the moment, that there's actually no football to be played and they're not getting any younger. They're getting older day by day. Do you think that's why they're leaving?
Well, looking on it now, they've got to have took into consideration. I mean, because even if they're out there playing in, say, the German reserve league is for their teams, at least they're playing competitive football and getting coached and improving more. If other teams playing bounce games against wee teams down in the second division, they're not going to get any better. It's not breeding a winning mentality or nothing like that.
And I think we've said before as well, haven't we, that there is a flaw in the Celtic youth development, as well as the actual overall, not being any competitive football to play or development games, whatever that may be. There is still issues with our development, and we spoke about it before, pathways into the first team that just don't exist. So there's possibly a combination of a number of factors as to why we're losing a lot of our youth players, and it's something that the new regime, director of football, manager, Dominic Mackay as well, they need to address that as soon as possible, because youth development should be a big part of Celtic Football Club and bringing through younger players and developing them. Well, like it always has been in the past, we've probably never seen as many in the last 15, 20 years as we did at any other time at the club.
Exactly. It seems to be kind of non-existent, really, or kind of youth academy at the moment, Mark, don't they? I know we've seen Montgomery breaking through, but there doesn't seem to be a young player able to establish himself in the first team. is that due to no football being played, or is it just the structure within Celtic, or could it be a bit of both?
Well, I think it's a bit of both. I mean, it's not just at Celtic. I think it's a problem across Scottish football. We seem to produce all these good young players. We've done it for. We ended up in the World Cup final for under 16s years and years ago. Many of them went on to be professional football players. We seem to
Mm-hmm.
all these so-called wonder kids, and then they hit a ceiling when they get to like 19, 20, when they should be starting to break into the first team, and they just don't get any better for then. But they play no
Mm-hmm.
games, even out with the pandemic. That's no helping anybody. But the overall thing in Scottish football is no having a competitive league for the young teams of the clubs, and that is ridiculous. It's ridiculous for a so-called professional league.
Mm-hmm. So the first question from the live chat, and I hope I get his name right, is Metzer Corona. Has anybody considered that Ayer maybe not be happy playing in defence and maybe fancies a move to try and get in a midfield role? Is that a possibility, Mark?
It might be, but well,
Because he loves to get forward, though, don't he? He loves to make runs, and he loves to,
he's played at centre.
and he can, like,
He's been a
you know.
centre back for played at our Norway for a while, and he's played it for he came over here. And it's playing centre back where all these big teams have been scouting him for, sir. I don't know if that's his thinking. Then he's a bit silly because no team's going to sign him. Do you get what I mean? If he's untried in that position.
Exactly. Barry, what's your thoughts on that comment there?
Yeah, I mean, we know that Ayer's got great ability, and he started out as a midfielder, I believe. However, from a young age, he was converted to a centre half, and we talk about his sort of driving forward from the field, but he recognises that from the centre half position. He recognises that he's got space ahead of him. But like I say, he's captained his country as a centre back. He's been linked with a move to AC Milan. AC Milan were, giving him big plaudits from the centre back position. So, whilst there is a possibility and an opportunity that he can play in midfield, there's no doubt about that, in my opinion. I don't think that would be in his thought process that he himself wants to move into that centre midfield position. I think, like I say, he's driving runs in midfield and foraging forward. They're from the centre back position when he's got the whole game in front of him.
Exactly, and especially with the modern game now as well. A lot of teams like their centre forwards to be able to play football with their feet rather than be this big hoof the ball up the field, So he'll actually suit European clubs in the modern day if he stays at centre back as well, Mark, won't he?
I think, as I've said, that's where he's been playing. That's where these teams have scouted him for. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that. I mean, he's not going to sign for AC Milan and then say, right, I don't want to play at centre back, but I want to play as a central defensive midfielder. AC Milan, but no, son, you're playing where we tell you you're playing.
David Gallagher was asking, is there any chance we can keep young Dembele? Barry?
I certainly like to think there's a good chance we can keep Dembele. That would be up to the manager to sort of convince him that he's going to get that opportunity. He's been told that previously by a manager, by Neil Lennon, and unfortunately that didn't work out. But I can certainly see. I remember seeing Dembele play against Rangers in the Youth Cup final. He must have been about 14 or 15, and I can see developments in his game since that day. He looks like I know he's just a small guy, but he looks like he's filled out slightly. He looks like he's a lot faster. I mean, that goal last night, he showed great pace and great composure in that goal that he scored last night. And I'd like to think that we'd do, or we're certainly going to try and keep the kid, because again, that's another one of the youth players, a real talent that we've nurtured through. I'd hate to see him leave and go for next to no money if that's what's going to happen. So
especially at a young age that he's never actually kind of broken into the first team as well, isn't it? That's one of the most disappointing things like that. If he did leave in the summer and we actually didn't get to see him play, Mark, as well, isn't it?
Well, it would be a disappointment if he left, but I agree with Barry. I'd like to think any manager coming in is going to say to the board, look, it's a priority we get him signed up, so you sort out the finances and I'll make sure he's happy to stay. Do you know what I mean? Promising him game time, keeping his promises. Because it
Is he?
no, on you
Go
go.
on, Mark. Sorry.
On you go.
Is he still too light, or is that the type of player that he is? That he's a fast winger. He's going to be a bit light to keep his pace and stuff like that. Or should he bulk up a bit more, Barry, do you think? Or
I think he certainly has to bulk up a bit more, but that'll come. Hopefully that'll come as he gets older. And, you know, he might very well fit into Eddie Howe's system. I mean, look, Eddie Howe had Ryan Fraser at Bournemouth, didn't he? He was just a short guy, albeit, you know, he certainly was a lot stockier than what Dembele is. But, you know, he can work on that side of his game. I don't have any problems there. But like I say, in terms of his pace that he showed yesterday, that's up against, you know, an experienced St Johnstone left back. And he ripped him for pace. So he's certainly developing his game. He's developing his physical aspects. But in terms of, he is small. That's just his height. I don't know if he'll get any bigger. Hopefully he will. But yeah, he can definitely work on that side of his game to, you know, in the gym and get himself stronger.
And it's not just him bulking up. It's not going to really affect his turn of pace or anything like that. But you think, Barry?
No, it shouldn't. If anything, it can help it. You know, if anything, it can help it. Bulking up and you know, getting on the leg weights and so on, that can actually make you faster. So, like I say, I was great to see him last night. It was great to see him get that goal. And like I say, it was a great turn of pace he showed. But yeah, no. I mean, developing the physical side of his game, that shouldn't deter from his speed or anything like that. And like I say, fingers crossed if it is Eddie Howe that he gets into Dembele's ear and says that you've got a future at the club.
Another player, sorry, Mark, go on.
While we're talking about Dembele, what Bobby's there, so in this live chat, he's saying potentially we wouldn't need a right winger if Dembele could step up and be James Forrest's understudy. I'd be happy with that.
Exactly, because there actually is no better player at the club at the moment with Scott Long leaving to learn from, really, in that position than James Forrest. Is there, Mark, you know?
No, but I mean, what we know he can do as a kid and what he showed even last night is, and Barry says if he bulks up a bit, there's no reason that Dembele isn't good enough to, if he signs a new contract, a lot of ifs here, but there's no reason that he shouldn't be in our squad just as our backup right winger.
Another young player that kind of, and he's similar to Dembele as well, and he kind of came off the radar is the young lad Flex as well. He kind of came off the radar as well. Aston Villa are supposed to be looking at him, aren't they?
Did somebody not say that he was lazy? And I'm sure we've spoken about him before on the live chat, and somebody said that he was just dead lazy and big-headed and arrogant. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm sure somebody said that on the live chat about him before. Because I thought we'd have seen a bit more of him this year as well.
Yeah, he kind of never. He kind of didn't really show us nothing either when the team were isolated in quarantine, and when he came on there was nothing that really got me excited about him either, Mark, was there? But he kind of came on, I believe, spells there.
He never showed much at all, didn't he? No.
So Bobby Sunderland saying it's a real activity on the board's part. If it comes in when a young player gets a better offer from a better league with more development and potential too, they can expect them to sign a deal here. You know, like we talked about numerous of times. Like it's really an area that we needs big focus on, be it the director of football or the new manager. Like it's an area that Celtic have really seem to be failing. The last couple of years is in the youth academy, isn't it? You know?
Yeah, I mean we've spoken about it before. It really, and it's like I said on a previous podcast, I want it to be a massive focus for the director of football and the management and you know, Dominic Mackay. I'd love it to be a big focus because Celtic in Scotland, they're not a cash-rich league that we're playing. You know, so whilst we're losing youngsters to you know, Germany and the English Premiership, you know, for their development, we should really at Celtic be convincing young players that this is the club that this is the club that they're going to get an opportunity to develop their game and make their break into Scottish football. And like we've said previously, unfortunately, that's just not happened. And it certainly should be a main focus that we have going forward, because as every supporter knows it and loves, it's great that when we see these young kids, these local kids, etc., coming through, breaking into the first team and really staking a claim for the first team. And sort of going back to Dembele being Forrest's understudy, I'd be more than happy with that. If Dembele was to get an extended contract and sort of be fighting out with Forrest, because we saw what happened to Forrest when Paddy Roberts came in and sort of claimed that position. Forrest just got better and better, so it's great to have competition in these positions. But yeah, absolutely, in terms of the youth development, for me, it should be a huge focus and a real good challenge for the director of football and the management team.
Mm-hmm. Mark, basically agree with that.
I totally agree with that. But youth development is something that Celtic.
Campsy is saying a good one there. Sorry, Mark. It's not just Celtic. It seems to be with problems with youth. It seems to be. Is it Scotland as a nation that Scotland are falling? And I see it's the same here in Ireland, that we seem to be the grassroots and the junior level things, like there's no one seem to be rising to be the next star of a nation within Ireland and Scotland. Like, it's like, what could Scottish football do as a whole to improve grassroots football in Scotland? What's the funding like there from? Is it none?
Oh, it's not the best at grassroots level. But what they need to do is get young players playing games. See, rather than even Celtic's guilty. We've got too many squad players that are just squad players like in their mid-20s. We shouldn't have that. Our squad, we should have, like, say 15, a first team 16 like man first team squad, and then see the rest of the squad. It should be made up of young players. We shouldn't see, like, I mean, Klamala, right? I know you said he was a good player, but Klamala sat there and done nothing for the length of time he was here, and yet he's done the same. We're padding out our squad with players that aren't good enough, really aren't good enough for the first team, and that's holding back these young players getting their chances. And that's not just at Celtic, at other teams in Scotland. We've seem to have a kind of infatuation with foreigners, and then at other clubs. I mean, we see it on the forum. People will suggest signing that Campbell for Motherwell and this one and others, but you can't. There's nobody in Scotland. I wouldn't have him in my team. Even Lewis Ferguson, there are folks saying Lewis Ferguson shouldn't get in the Celtic team. To me, that's a nonsense. He'd walk into that team tomorrow if it was up to me.
Barry, yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, for me, there's a number of players, and it was interesting to hear John Kennedy the other day. You spoke about it earlier in the rumours section with regards to Ali McCann.
Ali McCann.
Yeah, Ali McCann, and he was linked at the start of this year. He's been linked for this whole season, so I don't know if that was Nicky Hammond and Neil Lennon that identified him, but he's a good young player. But the good thing was, I don't know if you heard them say, John Kennedy said that they've got their eyes on a lot of Scottish talent, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You know, I think you're right, Mark. I think sometimes we do turn our nose up at players in this country, but that's not to say. I mean, we've had some good success over the years about getting players from Scottish clubs. We've had a number of successful players at this football club by going into the Scottish market, and I would have no problems going and doing it again.
It'd be a benefit too for Scottish football and Scotland as a nation if Celtic are approaching the next big players within the Scottish League, instead of having them go down south, sitting on the bench, not getting a game, or going down to League One, trying to get first team football. You know, it's a benefit to Scotland and Celtic if we do go for these players like Lewis Ferguson or maybe Alan McCann if there's truth in them. You know, but there has been no kind of stories really about Celtic going for Ferguson, Mark, has there? You know?
Been murmurs and rumours. I think it's just because he has one of the best players in the country. They know that are being kind of linked to him. I think it's possible it would come, but I think he's maybe eyeing a move down to England when he leaves Aberdeen. But Celtic should definitely been there. Asked the question. Should definitely been there trying to sign him.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Like we should, like, if a player wants to go down to England, then fair play, but we should certainly be going in and making an attempt to keep the best Scottish players in this country. I often feel we miss a trick by not going and signing players or maybe not showing an interest in allowing players to move down to England and see them flourish. And you think to yourself, that was an opportunity missed there by Celtic. So for me, we certainly should be. And John Kennedy said it himself. We've got an eye on all the sort of best talent in the country.
Well, think back to Stuart Armstrong, Barry. See if what level of an English team would have been in for Armstrong while he was at Dundee United. A championship.
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
We should be selling this to like Lewis Ferguson. Look, come to us for 3 or 4 years, and you'll not be in the championship. You'll be a mid-table league player. Do you know what I mean? Use it as a stepping stone to a higher level. Either move to England, rather than scrimping and scraping down the championship, hoping you'll get a move up.
Absolutely, Mark, and that's the Celtic's model. That's exactly the conversations that Celtic should be having with players. They should be saying, "Listen, if you've got aspirations to play at a higher level one day, come to us." That's the Celtic model: is to come, give them a platform to play on.
It's a gateway, really, Barry, isn't this?
Absolutely, they'll be competing for trophies. They'll hopefully win medals. They'll be playing European football, and they'll be gaining exposure that way. And there's no doubt about it. Any player that does well for Celtic attracts interest from multiple clubs. So it really is a great platform for a young player, certainly a young Scottish player, to come to the club and perform at a good level. And if they continue that progress, they will get a move. They will get the move that they're seeking.
Barry, was it yourself that was saying there that in the previous podcast, or I'm sure it said that these kind of youth academies there, they have young kids of like 11 years of age and stuff like that, and then being told they're not good enough to play football. Was that yourself that was saying that on a previous podcast with us?
Yeah, it was, Paul. There's multiple football academies now, and like I've said before, they start them at a really young age. They've got players in professional academies at like 7, 8 year old, and by the time they're hitting 9, 10, they're told, that they're not good enough, they're not going to make it. And I said before, I don't personally believe in that. I don't think you should be having players in academies at that age. I think
it seems to be like you I don't see the sense in that I like having these young kids come in like. All they want to do at that age is just have a kick along with a ball. They're not interested in how to pass the ball, tactics, or anything like that, or being told that, if you're being told that young age you're not good enough, you would get upset, Mark, wouldn't you? And you would kind of move away from the game then and go to a different sport or something,
Definitely. I can mind I failed a trial for a team when I must have only been about 8 or 9, and I can remember getting home and breaking my heart greeting because I'd failed this trial, sir. I mean, for somebody to tell you that you're not good enough, that's just nonsense. Kids should be enjoying football rather than. I mean, I used to go with my nephew when he played with his wee boys club and that in Hamilton. He used to go and just see these guys just standing at the side of the park. I mean, there was one guy used to stand there and he actually timed the halves. And this was back, I don't know if they still do it. The kids it got to, I think it was 10-0, and then they reset the scores, or 5-0, and they reset the scores or something. Well, they did, it was what they done. They went through a spell of doing this in kids football out here, and it was just to make it more, you're no, they weren't getting laughed at, they were getting beat 22-0 and things like that, Paul. And it was trying
everyone getting the bed and then at the end of the game or something,
things like that. And there was some of their dads and that, you're a pure redneck, mate, standing there timing the ref and then shouting at him about how long injury time he played in the half and things like that. And it took all the fun out for kids, their dads bawling and shouting at them about how you're not doing that right and you're not doing this right. That's no the way you're going to encourage kids to take up football through fear.
Especially too, Mark, with parents putting a lot of pressure on their kids as well at a young age for soccer. And I've seen it here in kids matches here that like, the parents be shouting at their child and stuff like that. Like, that's not good for a child either playing football, isn't this?
I'd sit there on a Saturday night and watch like, match of the day and sports scene, and then hear something, and then that's the they're doing it at the side of the park on the Sunday morning shouting out the same stuff. It doesn't help because you see the kid, you can see the kid's shoulders and heads going down with every time they're shouting at them, and they're just a lot of them weren't enjoying it at the time.
I think for any like young kid now, and they're looking at role models in sport like that and stuff like that. That's he's leaving us at the end of the season. Any young Celtic fan has to look at Scott Brown as a role model, Barry, to progress their career. Wouldn't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think Scott Brown's the ultimate role model. And you know, when you hear players that have played with him, played against him, more so probably the ones that have played with him, because they get a look at him sort of closer than anybody else does. They talk about his attitude and his desire and determination to just get better and better. He's the ultimate professional, and that's why he's had so much success throughout his career. 22 trophies and a 14-year Celtic career. The captain of the club as well. He is the ultimate professional and the ultimate role model. And it's sad to see him go yesterday. His final game at Celtic.
It is
Park,
like it's
but they should
kind of
strive to be Scott Brown.
It's kind of hard to picture next season that Scott Brown's not going to be involved in Celtic, Mark, isn't this?
I think for us this is a kind of version like when Billy McNeil left as a player and that for the older guys in the chat. But I suppose this is the kind of feeling that they had back then when all the Lisbon Lions. Do you know what I mean? When they all started breaking up, but Billy McNeil and Jimmy Johnson would be another one lately. But to me, this is your kind of version of that.
Because I was listening to sorry, Mark.
Just losing somebody that's just been there that long, so much success, and just he's been Mr. Celtic really for years, isn't it? And I mean, let's face it, he didn't even start at Celtic. He wasn't even a Celtic fan. So for him to come here and spend the amount of time he is and buy into the pure ethos of the club and the fans and the support, and just be Mr. Celtic for so long, turn down money to go other places and that, it's fantastic. Delighted for him, the career he's had for us. I really am.
I think we're for the likes of Callum McGregor, if he stays, and James Forrest, obviously, but it's going to be a long time after these three players that we're going to see a player be at Celtic for so long, Barry, isn't it? That it's not kind of there at the moment within the modern football, players staying with teams for 14 years. It's not there anymore, so it's not.
It's very unusual now, isn't it, to see a player staying at a football club for any length of time. Money tends to talk, and if a club offers higher wages elsewhere, they do tend to jump. So it is refreshing to see, that Scott Brown sort of broke that model, as Mark says. He did have opportunities in the past to go to other clubs and make moves, but he decided that he wanted to stay at this club and be a success and continue to compete and win trophies. And you know what, he'll go down as a Celtic legend in years to come. And like I say, it'll be very strange to see him in an Aberdeen jersey next year coming to Celtic Park. That'll be very unusual. But
would you think he'd want to play against us, or do you think he'd want to sit it out?
No, he'll want to play. Definitely.
Well, what we've just spoke about, the ultimate professional, and that's what he is, and that's what he'll do. And he'll come.
Dean's paying his wages. He'll be there getting 100% against us.
Definitely.
Right, so here's a scenario for the two of you. Like, we're all expecting Eddie Howe to be named as manager, but what if the last minute Crystal Palace or Newcastle came in for him and he turned them down? He agreed a contract with them, and Eddie Howe went belly up over all this waiting. What would happen then? Where would you think the club would be in dire straits, wouldn't we?
Roy Keane. No, that would be the chief Eddie Howe. Honestly, if it's no Eddie Howe, it'll be Roy Keane.
Well, something, I I'm repeating myself all the time now on these podcasts. I believe the deal's done. You know, I believe
believe that as well now, aye.
I believe there was an agreement weeks back, because I don't think Celtic could afford to sort of hang their hat on some
Well,
exactly, and be so silent. So I think the deal's done.
I
The
think they
announcement's
can't
not far
announce
away.
it,
It's going to happen.
Barry. Sorry, I think they can't announce it because I think they've agreed as well with Bournemouth as a package for their backroom staff, and because Bournemouth win the playoff, that's why they're not announcing it. You know.
That could be it. That could be it. You know, with regards to, I mean, like I said, there's been multiple sort of conspiracies as to why they've not announced it. You know, backroom staff, director of football, he's still on the payroll, etc. But no, for me, the deal's done with Eddie Howe. I could see it actually being announced within the next 7 days, or even sooner. And then, like I say, we need to start getting the ball rolling with recruitment, and really having a focus on going ahead for next season. I don't think we're far away from that appointment at all.
Because Mark, like, it's a strange one, like say like that Eddie Howe's coming in and the Celtic are waiting to, like, surely like the manager, an income manager already would have his own backroom staff in place, or if he's agreement that John Kennedy and Gavin Strachan be involved, like he knows who his backroom staff is already, if it is Eddie Howe, isn't it? You know?
that'll all be agreed. As Barry says, if this deal's been done for weeks or whatever, Eddie Howe will know exactly who's coming in as his backroom staff. I'll say he'll even have players lined up and everything for coming in. I think he's been.
Yeah.
If it is Eddie Howe, or whoever it is, they've been working behind the scenes for a while. Just if it is just, what's the word? I don't know. Just like looking at everything throughout the club. Do you know what I mean? Just checking out what's going on, what standards are around the club, and the training, the fitness stuff, and everything, and just getting a feel of the club and seeing what's actually needed, like immediately. Because we need to hit the ground running. See the things about the youth development and that'll all happen over time. But we need to, for the amount of players and everything we need for the next season, we need to have plans already in place for that. I think I agree with Barry. I think there's been working on for that for a while now.
But you know what has got me though, between all this scenario of the manager thing, is that the director of football role has just really stopped, hasn't it? Like, there's been no talk of a director of football the last couple of months. Like, that has really kind of went out the window, Mark, hasn't it? The director of football.
There's not been much said about it, even like rumours and stuff on Twitter and social media and that. But I think there was enough said at the time, and the hints on all the Lowell's wee friendly sites and that. I think there's got to be a appointment of a director of football.
I think like fans are kind of more interested in who the manager's going to be first, isn't it? That's the kind of fans' kind of major concerns, is the first team, isn't it?
But I mean, fans first and foremost, really all they care about is the product on the park and who's in the dugout. And then once that's gone well, they start looking at other things and what else isn't working right. Well, I mean, I've said in the forum for years there was problems behind the scenes with youth, the way the youth academy was running, who was signing players and things like that. But a lot of people on the forum didn't want to hear it because we were racking up trebles. Do you know what I mean? Everything in the garden was rosy. I was just a miserable sod and a moaning getting things like that. Do you know what I mean? But these problems were there if you looked at them, looked for them, and decided to see them. But a lot of people ignored them.
But Mark, is that down to the head of Youth Academy, Chris McCart, or do they need to be changed? Do you think the coaches down in the youth event, like so Chris McCart and Steve McManus, I know, is involved down there, Darren O'Dee's down there. There seems to be a lot of kind of ex-players that come into that role in Celtic, doesn't there?
It's
You know?
not really. No, I mean, we don't really know much about what McCartney actually do, but we've spoken often enough about how there's no pathway for youth players to get into the team. That's down to the way the club's been run. Do you know what I mean? The academy's got to take some of the blame for no producing players that are forcing them on, they need to make a step up. Do you know what I mean? If the players are good enough, they're no good enough. But the academy's got to ask, well, why are we not producing players that are even pushing forth, like young players just hungry, trying to get into the first team? But
Exactly. What's your thoughts? Sorry.
I've just got to say, I mean, most of our young players still leave and go and have a career in football, so they can't be that bad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was that young boy McCarthy that was with St Johnstone last night. I mean, he was with us and let go, and now he's playing with St Johnstone. And I see even folks saying we should sign him back.
Mm-hmm. Barry, what's your thoughts on the Celtic coaches in the youth academy? Do they need to be looked at as well, you think, in this structure?
I'm not sure if they have to be looked at or not, to be honest, Paul. You know, you can look at it and say, well, you know, we're not seeing many youth players breaking into the first team. So is it an issue with the youth players, or does it go a bit deeper than that? You know, is it that, you know, the scouting system for youth players is an issue? You know, the players that are being recommended, the young players that are being recommended to come into the youth, and you know, there's so many factors that can be involved in terms of players maybe not making the grade. But you know, because Celtic don't produce a great deal of youth into their first team, like Mark was saying, sometimes it's better for a player to go away somewhere else and get the opportunity, for want of a better phrase, at a smaller club. You know, there's, like Mark said, there have been multiple players that have left Celtic and gone to, you know, lesser clubs in Scotland and gone on to have really good careers. It happens all the time. And again, that's slightly disappointing when you see players that are going away and having good careers, and you think what
The
might
young
have
lad,
been. But
what's his name? Was it Hampton or St Mirren he was with for years? The fella McGowan, is it? Paul McGovern, is it? McGovern?
yeah, Paul McGowan, he's at Dundee now. Like I say,
Yeah,
there's
he
a
was in the wrong
number of
Scottish football for a number of years, weren't he? To have a nice career for himself as well, wasn't he? And he was another player that was expected to be the next big thing at Celtic, but just didn't work out for him. He never got a chance really to break into the first team, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, there's a number of players that you can say that's happened to, but like we've spoken about before, for me, we really need to address the youth development situation, and in my opinion, young players should know or be like, they should be speaking to the younger players and saying, look, this is what you need to do to get in the first team, and if you do this, if you can meet this criteria, and if you can develop the way that you will be in this first team. They need to know that they're going to get an opportunity, because I don't think that's there at the minute. I don't think it's there whereby a youth player at the club is confident or has an idea that in a year's time or whenever it may be,
Exactly.
that I will be a first team player. I don't think that exists, and that's something, like I say, if it's Fergal Harkin that comes in the director of football, that was his forte, so he could potentially have a good input into that. But yeah, for me, it's a kind of it's a bit what if, you know, are you going to make it? Are you not? You know, there's no pathway to the first team, as Mark's already said, and that's
The thing
something
that
there
gets me,
should be.
Barry, is that we see a player in the first team for, we say, 1 or 2 weeks on the bench or in around the first team, and then we don't see him then again for the rest of the season. Like Dembele, he was in around the season at the start, and then he just disappeared. You know, as you said, like they don't seem to be in and around the team or around the team in match days to get that. Like it's not about playing, really. It's like being in and around the first team, being on the match day squad, get that whole feeling behind you. Do you know what I mean? It's
Well, you know what,
non-existent. Like,
Paul? Young players, you know what? They should be confident that if they're progressing and they're delivering the goods, that they're going to be in that first team. That's what they should. That's the way they should feel. They should feel that if I'm giving my all in training and I'm producing on the park when I'm getting the opportunity, I will be a first team regular. But that doesn't happen at the club, unfortunately. And like I said before, that's something for me that we have to address, because we should. Any young player should have that opportunity in the first team, no matter what club you're at. Like I say, if you're making progress and you're, you know, delivering in training and you're showing a good attitude and a good desire in training and getting opportunities in the first team, you should be confident as a young player that you have the opportunity and the ability to break in and become a first team regular. But unfortunately,
exactly,
they're
like
few and far between at the minute.
if you're good enough, Barry. Basically, isn't it? You know.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter what age you are. I mean, Dembele made his debut at 16, didn't he, against Hearts? He came on, he had a debut that day. He really lit up the place. But like you say, Paul, I think he's only played maybe 2 or 3 times since. That's not any use for a young player. If you're not going to be playing that first team, then it might have been an idea to get him out on loan and look to develop him that way. But these young players should be confident they're able to come into the Celtic first team. That's what should happen.
I'm actually surprised that he's actually kind of not one of our youth players that actually ever went out on loan, Mark Dembele. You know?
You can't send under 18s out on loan.
That answers my question. So we're moving on for that. And next is, and I mentioned in the rumours, is that John Kennedy and Gavin Strachan, they haven't been told about the Celtic rebuild or anything like that. They haven't been told who the next managers. These are the rumours. Do you think two of them are under pressure, John Kennedy and Gavin Strachan, next season to be involved in Celtic? Mark?
Well, I've said before, I think Kennedy should be looking for a management job himself to prove he's his own man and what he can do as a manager. He's been about Celtic long enough now and he's had a wee chance at the first team manager and well, it's not really worked out too well for him. But I mean, Gavin Strachan, we don't really know what he does, this data analyst stuff. He's meant to be good at it, but even if Celtic let him go, he'll probably find a job somewhere else easy enough. I don't think any. As I said, Stratton could probably, if he's as good as if he's as good at his job as people say, as Eddie Howe will know that. So he might have a job with Eddie Howe, but I can't see where John Kennedy could get a job at Celtic now. It's long overdue for him to be away and be his own man.
I think, like, with so much talk about there being lack of leadership within the coaches this season, like we actually don't know what role Gavin Strachan plays in the club really this season, Barry, do we? It just seems the coaching staff seem to be all over the place this season, and we don't actually know much about him.
Yeah, I mean, and that goes down to the performances on the park as well. When things aren't going well on the park, everybody gets questioned, from the manager to the coaching staff. But I mean, I would find it a bit strange if John Kennedy and Gavin Strachan are sort of sitting about to wait and find out if they're part of the new manager's plans. Like we've said before, and like Mark just said there, I think the time's come for John Kennedy to go and become a manager elsewhere. I've said that on a previous podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't see the benefit of him hanging around. He's been a coach at the club now for a number of years, and he's served under a good few managers now. I think for his own progression and development in the management game, I think it's time for him to go. So I'd be surprised and a bit confused if he was sort of hanging around and hoping that the new manager sees him as part of his sort of backroom staff. I think the time's come for John Kennedy to go and become a manager elsewhere.
I think the new manager would want a fresh start with his own backroom staff as well, Mark. I don't think he'd want Kennedy kind of come in or this player knows that and make his own judgment on the team. Do you think? Yeah.
Well, a lot of managers if they're coming into a foreign country, a different league, like to have somebody about them that knows the league and knows, do you know what I mean, the local game, the Scottish game, or whatever it is. But I still don't think it should be Kennedy. If Kennedy does end up with a job still at Celtic, I think it shows he's got a total lack of ambition. If he's just sitting there waiting,
exactly,
it's just sitting there waiting in the hopes that he's going to get a job. But Barry says I can't see that. I think Kennedy and Stratton and the rest of them will know what their positions are already. Again, it's just all party. They can't see anything. The new kind of thing.
I think for any new manager coming in, Skpe around even is going to be a big loss, not having that leadership in the dressing room next season, Mark, isn't it?
A big loss, but it might be a good thing as well. What if Eddie Howe came in and him and Scott Brown didn't get on?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Where there's a split in the dressing room because all the old guard's going to be in Scott Brown's side and all the new players are going to be in Eddie Howe's side. And I think that's maybe part of one of the reasons as well that Scott Brown's decided it's time to go. Just as I've said the other night on the podcast, just a clean sweep. Lowell's away. It's the end of Neil Lennon's association with the club. 10 in a row is done and out. But no, I mean everything. It was just time to clear the boards.
Mm-hmm. Do you agree with that? That maybe it is a good thing that Scott Brown is leaving by, that we can actually find a player with more decent legs or have a different leader in the dressing room rather than Scott Brown.
Yeah, well, like I've said previously, Eddie Howe, if it is Eddie Howe, he might want to bring in his own sort of leader and captain. I said previously, for me, there should be multiple leaders in the changing room and on a football park. I said that previously, but with Scott Brown leaving, there's no doubt about it. He was the dominant leader in the changing room and on the pitch. Now there's an opportunity for somebody else to step up. And like I say, whether that be Eddie Howe brings in his own man or multiple people, or if there's an opportunity for somebody within the club at the minute to think, you know what, I'm going to step forward, I fancy being a leader on this park, then, like I say, there's opportunities there for some people to step forward. But there's no doubt Scott Brown will be a miss in and around the club and in and around the changing room.
Will is saying there that Strachan came with a good reputation in England, like, so with Eddie Howe being English and being around English football, I would think he would know what Strachan is about, Mark, as well. Do you think?
Well, that's what I said. He seems to.
Yeah.
He has got a good reputation at doing what he does. And if if Eddie Howe again, if it is him or whoever it is comes in and says, "Oh, I've heard about Stratton. He does good work. I want him as part of my team." That's good enough for me. You've got to put some trust in the manager, kind of thing. No, I mean, if he thinks that if Eddie Howe thinks that Stratton's good enough to be the data analysis or whatever it is for Celtic, we've just got to accept that.
Exactly. Interesting here from Glasgow Green, and we don't know, was this meeting today between Dominic McKay and Peace Lawler and an unnamed fans group. Do you think that's to do with anything about fans getting into the stadium next season and maybe season renewal tickets, Mark? Or have we heard anything about this meeting yet?
I've not heard anything at all about it. I don't even know if people are saying it's the Celtic Trust was in talking to them. Somebody said it was numerous fan groups. Well, our invite was lost in the post, lad. Sorry.
I think it could be about. I can't see the Celtic board telling them anything that's going on in the club or who the next manager is. I think it's more
like that'll be.
Yeah.
It was the thing that we were talking. I don't know if we did talk about it with Chelsea letting fans into the board meetings and that.
Yeah.
I spoke to Ed too about it, but they said it was just kind of an appeasement because of the mess up over the European Super League and that.
Yeah.
And the fans are going to. I mean, these fans that think are going to get in board meetings, the Celtic board and the Chelsea board, they don't sit there and talk about who they should be signing and things like that. They talk about boring. Do you know what I mean? Boring things to us, things that we don't want to really know. Do you get what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And they're only allowed into so many meetings. Plus, there's confidentiality things and everything. But just see the day. It would just be, I don't know, like a wee pat in the head to make whatever groups are invited, make them feel important. I'd be surprised if there was anything that important said at them.
I think so.
It'll be similar to the statement that was released last week, won't it? That's what I think.
Yeah.
Because there's no doubt that the people there or the fans there, they'll be asking about, when's a new manager being appointed, when's a director of football being appointed, when are we getting back? It'll be sort of similar. Listen, we're working hard in the background.
Yeah.
We'll have an announcement soon. I'd imagine it'd be something like that. I don't think there'll be many questions answered.
Daft PR stunt kind of idea.
Yeah.
It's pointless. His email probably. We'll just put it like that. It's pointless.
My thing,
they sent it.
Thing going back to that, like, is having these. I know we talked about it in the last podcast, but I was reading about it, and I was reading about the Chelsea. I know Spurs are starting to follow that. They're going to let fans on the board. My thing is that if that any information there gets leaked to anyone within the supporters members, and this information gets leaked to the media, because
But they can't.
that has been,
Thing, Paul, they can't
but the,
leak it. They're,
but that
they're
but
bound with boardroom
but
confidentiality.
that's like saying Mark, like information has got leaked to media this season about Celtic starting lineups against Rangers, that the lineup would come out before it's announced. Like, could that thing scenario happen again? Do you think if fans were on these board meetings?
No, because they would get found out pretty quick if they were leaking stuff out the boardroom, Paul.
Hmm.
Because
Like, yeah, exactly.
guys,
Yeah,
these
like
guys,
whoever's on it,
these
like
guys are daft. See if,
who you saying that to in your association kind of a thing, isn't it?
see if there was a leak out the boardroom or that. Then the guys aren't daft. They'd just say something stupid like it's a plant story, and then see who. If it came out in the paper, they would know exactly who it was who was leaking it, kind of idea. But
Hmm.
it's honest. It's just I really don't understand the urge for fans to be in board meetings and things like that. You know, it's the board is they talk about things as I've just said that they don't sit and talk about transfers. Or do you think we should sign him? Could see the way we talk about it on the forum and things like that. That's what these fans think it's going to be like in the boardroom, and that's really not what it's like at all. It's mind-numbing stuff that the board deals with, apart from obviously when it is transfers as such. But at Chelsea and places like that, that's all left to other people.
Hmm.
Right.
Mark, would you like to go maybe in the future? The question for the two of you: would you like Celtic to be owned by the fans, Barry?
Um, I don't know. To be perfectly honest, Paul, I think Dermot Desmond. He sometimes gets a bit of flack, doesn't he? He sometimes gets a bit of stick from the supporters about sort of lack of investment and stuff. But I actually feel quite safe, to be honest, under Dermot Desmond. I always think that if push comes to shove, or the club are ever in trouble, or if there needs to be a particular appointment made or an investment made, I'm always quite confident that Dermot Desmond would stump up the goods. I don't know. I just think, for me, to have a businessman looking after your club is always a good thing. And maybe supporters as such maybe don't have that business knowledge. I don't know if it would be a good thing or not, to be perfectly honest with you.
Hmm. That'd be my thing. Like, would be the funds, them able to manage the funds within the club and stuff like that. As you say, like, it's good to have a businessman run it and have a business structure, because like you have to give Desmond a lot of credit the way they stable Celtic books over the last couple of years, Mark. Like, I couldn't see that happening under Celtic being owned by supporters that we be so secure now. Would you?
But it depends what you mean beyond by supporters. Are we talking about outright owning the club, or are we like talking about like a German 50+1?
No, outright Celtic fans.
No, that would just be. That wouldn't work. I don't see how that would even work. I really,
You know,
then again, all these egos all come into play because we're electing people and things like that. Do you know what I mean? Nah, it's no for me. I
because
agree with Barry.
my local club here, they were owned by Forest, like it's a supporters group, all different businessmen around Cork and stuff like that. And th- we're in severe financial difficulty because these are businessmen. They're putting their own money into the club, and they're not making nothing. You make nothing back in the League of Ireland. They're not. It's not an investment. It's just for your love for the club, like that. Like,
We're going about this, as I'm saying there, the German 50+1 rule and that, but all these German teams are owned and underwritten with massive companies and massive TV deals, massive sponsorship. They're what buy,
sponsorship. A lot of the stadiums over there too, Mark, are named as well, aren't they? Over in Germany, aren't they?
but they're Bayern Munich, what they've done, they released a statement about the season tickets. They could put them up for £100 odd to £300. It would make them £2 million or £5 million or something a year. And basically they said, what's £5 million to us? we wouldn't even argue over that. A transfer fee, basically, that's what they said. But that's a lot different when they've got the money that Bayern Munich have got and the backing they've got and everything that behind them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas in Scotland, £25 million extra in season ticket money is a lot of money.
It could go down that way, Mark, couldn't it? If it was owned by a fan group like that, the likes of season tickets or anything like that, merchandise, jerseys, anything like that could be sky high to raise funds for a fandom group then as well, couldn't it? You know?
It's like, who would you get to run it then, Paul?
So I'm saying,
Who'd be making the decisions? And then is that a case of, they're right.
who do you decide? Between themselves,
Supposing Celtic fans owned Celtic, right? What you're talking about now, right? So then, look what happened with John McGinn. Is that a good enough reason to get rid of Peter Lowell? Because there'd have been enough fans probably at that time that would have voted for Peter Lowell to get sacked. Do you get what I mean?
Because I think this is what the Celtic Trust are kind of nearly pushing at, aren't they? Kind of fan groups owned Celtic, isn't it?
They're trying to get enough shares to get somebody on the board.
You know, so Glasgow Green says there's been no link at Celtic since Neil Lennon left. So we let that at that. So we're moving on, and I thought it was a bit funny last night when I saw the Celtic players voting for their player of the year in a season that was so terrible. And I text Mark, I said, are they actually voting for player of the year? You know, Christoph I got player of the year by the Celtic players. Do you think Malika on a forum said that they shouldn't have voted for player of the year, that they should have came out and apologised for this season instead and had some respect? What's your thoughts on that, Barry, that Celtic players vote for player of the year?
You know what? It's a standard process.
Mm-hmm.
It's a standard process that they have to have now. Obviously, like I say, the last 9 years has been, riddled with success, one trophy after trophy. I can understand maybe some supporters being a bit, being a
part of the annual end of season.
That's
into Barry,
yeah,
isn't he?
yeah.
Every team in the country's picked their player of the year this year. No matter whether they get relegated or anything.
It happens every year. Like I say, it just so happens that this year it's been a disastrous season, and we've not won any trophies. But they're not going to break with tradition and decide not to have a player of the year. And
are we too quick to judge, Barry? Do you think a lot of Celtic fans, like, I know we had a bad season considering what was at stake, like, but do we forget quickly what we achieved?
Something. It all comes down to the present, doesn't it? So obviously this year we were going for the 10 in a row. So the whole 9 previous seasons' title wins and the quadruple treble, you don't think about that. You're only living in the present. And this, like I say, this has been a disastrous season, and this is how a lot of supporters and a lot of people associated with the club are obviously hurting this year. And you can understand how maybe a few supporters are a wee bit annoyed at the fact that there's a player of the year. But, like I said, that is tradition. They do it every year. I wasn't envisaging this year being any different regardless of what happened. And you know what? Out of everybody, you couldn't argue with the guys who were picked. Even though it's been a disastrous season, David Turnbull, he got the young player of the year.
Young player of the year, yeah.
And deservedly so. And Ayer, he got the player of the year, and he probably was one of, if not the better player of the season. So, like I say, it's when you've not won anything this year, you can understand that some fans think, well, there shouldn't be any player of the year awards given. But I think it's to do with the way it happened this year as well. It wasn't just that we didn't win anything; it was the way that it was just.
I've just got to say that, Barry. Yeah, that at the start of the season, as Celtic supporters, we were delighted that we kept all these same players. We had a unit together that's been so successful, and it's just the way it collapsed was the thing that hurt the most, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we've said it before. It was the level of performance that we're seeing week in, week out. You know, we've said it many times before on the podcast. The Celtic supporters, we can accept bad spells. We can expect, you know, the odd game here and there. But for it to have lasted the whole season, that's the bit that's really unforgivable. But you know, like I say, I kind of want to forget about what's happened this year.
Yeah. So on the bright side, goal of the season, and I was going to pick this, was Zorro's goal against Dundee outside the box. That rocket that he got against Dundee United. That was voted goal, and he. I was watching his interview yesterday. He seems a bit of a character, Zorro. You know, like a big jolly person. You know, and it's just a pity we haven't seen much of him this season, Mark, isn't it?
Oh, it's a pity, even for the progression of the team. But we've spoke about it before, the favouritism towards Brown and that, and it's no helped Sorrow's progress either. Because I mean, he's only a young player as well. You've got to mind that, and it's just he should have been playing a lot. He should have played a lot more minutes for us this season than he has, and that's one of the biggest mistakes this season. Is no playing the likes of Sorrow and letting him grow into the role of becoming maybe no as captain, but on the pitch in that position, getting him used to the role of becoming Scott Brown's successor.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing that was strange about Sorrow was when he broke into the team, he done really well, and for me, he was dropped for no reason.
No reason, yeah,
because,
exactly.
Because Brown get fit.
See that's
whatever it was.
That's just poor management. Because like we say, if players are out the team for whatever reason it may be, and whether that's Scott Brown or anybody, you've got no God-given right to get back in the team if there's somebody in your position performing well. And that's what Sorrow was doing. You know, that goal you talk about, Paul, that was just in December, around about Christmas time. He was doing really well, and you know, he played in the game at Ibrox just after. He was on a right good run, and then all of a sudden he's out the team, and he's never really got back in it. And for me, it was unfair for him to get dropped.
I mean, it seems like it's gone back to what we were saying, Mark, into favouritisms between John Kennedy and Neil Lennon because it's his last season playing Scott Brown, and because he's a legend to the club. But Scott Brown still had a part to play in this thing, coming on if we're winning games, or thing just to close up the game. But he shouldn't have been playing as many games as he had this season, and let Zorro on the bench of what we saw of him, you know.
We played enough games this season between Europe and domestically for both Scott Brown and Sorrow to get plenty of game time. No reason for there was no reason that I can think of for Sorrow not to get any more game time. Because see if what he's doing showed us during games. If he's doing that in training, it's back we were talking about young players. See if you're putting in performances in training, you get a crack at the first team. Do you get what I mean? If you're doing that, and then you get your Sorrow was in there doing nothing wrong, as Barry says, and then just
nothing wrong, yeah, exactly.
So that's back again to your pathway to the first team. If no reason that Sorrow get dropped after Brown came back, apart from it was Scott Brown that came back. So
if you're a young player, Mark,
how can you encourage players to come to Celtic, etc., blah blah blah, when you're saying to a player, "Oh, you come into the team, you get in the team, take the chance." That's what we're telling young players today: come into the team and take your chance, take it by the scruff of their neck, and then when they do it, they get dropped again.
Like it must be going back to in his head, Mark, being a young player, like, what did I do wrong to be back in the bench? Do you know what I mean? You know, what did I do wrong?
That's poor management. That's real poor management on Neil Lennon's part for me. Because like I said, that kid did nothing wrong. He came in there and he must have been feeling really good about himself, really good about his game. You know, with the performances he was putting in. And
especially when the fans were happy with him too, Barry, and they were talking him up.
Yeah, the fans were really impressed, and rightly so. So for him to then, you know, bombed out the team, he must be thinking to himself, what have I done wrong? You know, what have I done to deserve getting bombed out the team? So that was poor management on Neil Lennon's part. And like you guys said, that was just specifically because it was Scott Brown. But, you know, like you said, Mark, Scott Brown could have still played a part this season. Whether that be that he was coming on to replace Sorrow, or, you know, he came in for the odd game. But, you know, if a player comes into the team and performs at the level that Sorrow did, he had no reason to be dropped. That wasn't great.
Exactly. It's like Scott Brown shouldn't have been playing as many as games as he has this season when we had the likes of, like you say something if we didn't have a natural replacement for Scott Brown, and we actually still don't know if we have a replacement for Scott Brown because we haven't seen enough of Zorro, and that's due to the fault of Neil Lennon having favouritism over Scott Brown over Zorro, you know. So we're moving on, and look, we're going to talk about it. It's the last game of the season, and for me, it's the it can't come fast enough to finish this season and have some daylight into Celtic and get rid of all this darkness that's around us this season. Any thoughts on the game at the weekend, lads? You hope to see that Kennedy will actually play more youngsters and give more youngsters a chance, or will Scott Brown, as you said there, start the game next weekend?
It wouldn't surprise me if they start it because it's at Hibs. Another wee bit of sentimentality, kind of.
Is it righteous, Mark? Sorry, am I right in saying that when Scott Brown left his last game for Hibs was against Celtic as well?
I scored. Did he not score against us?
Yeah. That was his last game as well, wasn't it? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I think he will start. It wouldn't surprise me just the way things have been going, but I'd be starting Sorrow. I'd be starting young Montgomery. Don't think what we're talking about. If you've not put a foot wrong, they should be starting the next game, in my opinion. No matter who you're keeping out the team. And well, I'd maybe even just give Dembele a start. It's just
I'd like to see Dembele start. Yeah,
another
yeah.
meaningless game.
You know, what about Griffiths? Would you like to see Griffiths start?
I'd rather see Griffiths starting Edward.
Mm-hmm.
I said weeks ago Edward shouldn't have been starting games. After we went out the Scottish Cup, I wouldn't have played Edward again, really. So I'd let Griffiths start it, whether he's going to be here or no. If we're going to be starting Scott Brown, out of sentimentality, we might as well start Griffiths as well.
It is a strange one, isn't it? Like, we actually don't know what the situation is with Griffiths, like, at the moment. So we don't, like, I honestly think that there's been a fallout between himself and Kennedy as well. Has there, between himself, Kennedy and Lennon, that there's been a huge fallout between the three of them? You know? Do you think?
A fallout, sorry.
Yeah, Mark, sorry.
I mean,
Barry, yeah. Do you think there's been a fallout between Kennedy and Griffiths as well?
I don't know if there's been a fallout. I mean, I think Kennedy this week has said that Griffiths' situation will be decided by the incoming manager. For me, I would play Griffiths on Saturday. The team that I would start on Saturday compared to the team that I think will start are two very different. Like Mark said, I'd play Dembele, I'd play Griffiths, I'd play Montgomery. I'd definitely play Sorrow for sure. But no, I definitely think Scott Brown will play. I think the sentiment will come into that. You know, get going at his last game against his old club. That'll definitely happen. But it's a non-game. You know, I'd imagine they might even rest a few players. They've got the Scottish Cup the following week, don't they? The Scottish Cup final. So they'll rest a number of players, I would think. I'll have a very end of season feeling to it. But I mean, for me, I'd be throwing in some of the younger guys, giving them an opportunity. But I think Kennedy will probably stick with his tried and tested players. I think Edward will play over Griffiths. I think Brown will play over Sorrow, and the team will, Elliot Nusi, I'd imagine, will play. I think he'll stick with the team that he's played for most of the games that he's been in charge.
And on a good note is that it's going to be the last time we're going to see some of these players in a Celtic jersey, and that's when the rebuild will actually start, Mark, won't it? You know?
Oh, well, hopefully it's the last time we'll see a few of them guys like Christie and that. They've not tried a Lego season, but it's not even a clean slate yet, as we've said. We still expect Brown and that to start, but it just shows you how big the rebuild is going to be come the summer. The players we're sitting talking about that's not going to be here, and the players that we're hoping were going to be here. And if they all leave, it leaves a big hole in the full squad.
It's potentially, though, that these players could leave that we've named out in previous podcasts, Barry. There's potential that 11 players or maybe more could actually leave the club.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's potential, but I think there's a right good chance that all these players are there. I mean, the players that mentioned that will go, I think there might only be one or two that have a half chance of staying. So, Mark's absolutely right. It's going to leave a huge, hole in the squad, but at the same time, it's a right good opportunity for, if it is Eddie Howe to come in
That's right.
and
That's
bring
right.
in
Thinking
all
like
the players it's an opportunity for a manager to bring in a whole new team. It's not a manager that's coming in to a team that's already settled, that's already got a foundation there. This is an opportunity for the manager to come in and actually bring in all
exactly.
the players that he wants, the players that fits his system, like I've said before. So it's a real good opportunity for a new manager to come in and really put his stamp on the squad.
Because Mark, you could really say that like Brendan Rodgers came in and he always got a bit of stick, but Ronnie Dyler did lay the foundations for Brendan Rodgers to come into that Celtic team. Brendan Rodgers left the foundations for Lennon, but the next manager is going to have no foundations to build on. This is going to be a whole different Celtic team.
We're back to like the Martin O'Neill kind of rebuild for me,
Yeah,
Paul. That
yeah,
kind of level.
yeah.
Just to say there's no foundations laid. There's maybe going to be 8, 9 players left that are up for being in like at first team level, and after that it's a clean slate, isn't it? It's whatever the manager and his backroom staff and well, hopefully director of football and the new CEO can deliver for us all. It's a clean slate, and somebody spoke about it earlier, a project and things like that. All these, it seems it's a kind of buzzword in football. Managers come out where they're looking at projects, but it's a good thing if a manager's thinking like that as well. Because I'd rather a manager come in and spoke about the project of rebuilding Celtic than just come in and like gave sound bites than if then in a year or 18 months he's looking for his next club. Because if you're doing everything that his manager's looking for, he's going to want to stick around because it is his project. It's what he's planning, what he's into, what he's buying into, what he's working on. And that's the way to move forward. Try and keep him happy. If we kept Brendan Rodgers happy with signing players, I don't believe Brendan Rodgers asked for anything that outlandish that Celtic couldn't give him it. The likes of John McGinn, other players that probably slipped through the net. And if Celtic had gave Brendan Rodgers what he was wanting, we'd been a lot healthier place on the pitch and off the pitch and I do believe that Rodgers would have stayed and helped deliver the 10.
Would you agree with that, Barry? Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And I think, with regards to the project, this could potentially be what's attractive to an Eddie Howe. Eddie Howe might have not wanted the Celtic job if he was coming into, a settled squad or a squad that, that had the foundations there. He might have not fancied that, but, for any manager to come into a massive club like Glasgow Celtic and to be able to put their own stamp on it, like I say, to bring in the players that he wants to bring in, to play the system that he wants to play and the style that he wants to play, it's a huge pull for a manager. So I think, the job in hand might very well be attractive to Eddie Howe and the reason that he might want to come to the club.
I think so. I would agree with that. I think it's an exciting project for any manager to come into Celtic because you're doing a whole new rebuild at Celtic, something that hasn't been done since the Martin O'Neill era, and it's a big opportunity for Eddie Howe as well to show actually type of manager he is, that he's able to start from scratch. And all I can say that it's going to be exciting times. Like there's going to be a buzz again around Celtic of players who we're potentially going to sign and who we are going to sign. So I'm excited, lads, after next Saturday.
You're going to have plenty of content, Paul, for the future podcasts because there'll be players coming in every second day, I would think, and players going out. So there's going to be plenty to speak about in the coming months, that's for sure.
So, lads, that's it from tonight. Again, my thanks to Barry for always coming on the show and we ask him, and he's always giving us great topics to talk about with us. And again, my thanks to Mark. Mark, for yourself, close the show.
Just thanks again to you, Paul, for everything you do for the podcast and everything else. And thanks very much, Barry, again for coming on. You're always brilliant, mate. You're welcome on here anytime. And
cheers, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks for everybody that joined us a live chat. and if you haven't subscribed, please do so. Right, good night, lads. God bless. God bless.
Bye bye.